everybody. Welcome to Spoiler Peace Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Dave Riedel. I'm a movie type person in the sense that I enjoy watching them and talking about them and writing about them. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and my pronouns are he, him.
My name is Evan Crean. My pronouns are he, him. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living.
And my name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network, and I too am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
Yes. I decided to go with the Bugs Bunny pronunciation today.
Very nice.
All right, we got some movies on the show tonight, as we always do. But before we get into this week's crop, I would like to propose that you all go over to our Patreon if you are a member. And if you are not a member, please consider becoming one. Because we talk about John Carpenter's 1982 opus, The Thing. And one of us, who shall remain nameless, had never seen it before. And I'm just going to say, it was a lively, goopy conversation, and we had a blast, and we think you would too. And it would mean a great deal to us if you listened to it, because it was just so much fun. And that's the whole point of this show, fun. So that being said, let's talk about two movies, one of which is not fun because it's a heavy fucking drama. It's called The Legend. It's called The Legend of Molly Johnson. And then the other movie on the show tonight is Glorious. It is a horror movie that takes place in a men's room, which is horrific in and of itself.
Yep. A rest stop men's room.
Yeah. I mean, you can't get much more gross than that. So, but anyway, we're going to start with The Legend of Molly Johnson, which is an Australian movie written and directed by and starring Leah Purcell. And I am not going to use my corny Australian accent because, like I said, this is a heavy drama. So it just doesn't feel appropriate to talk about dingoes. And there are no dingoes in this movie that I can remember seeing. So
no, not a one.
Not a one. One sentence IMDb summary. A lonely bushwoman struggles to raise her children and run the family farm while her husband is away. Which is sort of... I mean...
He's away.
He's away underground. Yeah.
Dead
under the woodpile.
Yeah, that's one of those things where it's like... I understand why you wrote that, because you don't want to be like, she murdered her husband for good reason, I might add. This is one of those things where, like, I'm kind of surprised you didn't kill him earlier. So anyway, Molly Johnson is a bushwoman. She is, she's grown up and lived her whole adult life in, this isn't really the outback, but it's Australia in like the 1870s. So basically everything is the outback at this point. There's just like miles of land that is empty between these small towns, and the English
An angry bull wanders into their yard.
Right. A bull.
Who knows where?
Yeah. And so how many kids does she have? She has 4, and then she has a 5th one who dies of SIDS, like pretty...
Oh, the baby she's pregnant with?
The baby, yeah. Or is it stillborn? I guess they never really say, but the baby dies.
Yes.
Right.
And so Molly is tending to this family, and she's very... she's always on edge. And I think she probably always was on edge before. But as we learn later, now she's really got a fucking reason to be on edge, because she's fucking shot and killed her husband and buried him under the woodpile. But we'll get to that.
Well, and she's also dealing with the PTSD of all of his like physical abuse.
Well, right. Exactly. So this English couple that is, like right off the boat, smells the roast that she's making from who knows how far away. And they've lost all of their food and belongings when they were crossing a river. And they're like, and by the way, the constable or whatever he is, he's fucking shady right from the beginning. I know that he's a quote decent unquote man, as it turns out, but when he's just like walking toward the house with like that limp, and it's like, dude, this woman's holding a shotgun and she's like 10 feet away from you. You better fucking back the fuck up. But Molly is, an accommodating person. She feeds them, and she says, hey, take my kids over to the town while I have this baby, and bring them back after I've had the baby. And I remember thinking, that's strange. And then we get to town. I guess you would say an indigenous man has been accused of murdering a lot of people, and he's on the run, and he shows up at Molly's farm, and she takes him in, and they kind of start working together I can't remember. Does he say, hey, I killed these people, or I've been accused of killing these people? I don't remember. Somebody fill me in. Because Molly knows about the murders, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe he says the only crime I've committed is existing while black.
Right.
I believe that's what he says.
Yeah, he does say that. And as we learn, Molly is also indigenous. She has one indigenous parent. I think her mother.
Yes. And Leah Purcell is indigenous in
she is
real life too. Yes.
And because this being the time that it is and her being an indigenous person, basically the short version is in an effort to defend herself from her abusive psycho husband, who also has a habit of hanging out with sex workers against Molly's wishes while he's droving sheep, because he's a drover. She shoots and kills him while he's attacking her one night, buries him under the woodpile, and that's kind of what starts this whole thing. And the short version is that Molly, on the way to her kids, are sent, like, there was that, I don't know what the law is called, when the Australian government decided it could take indigenous children from their families and put them in white schools. But that happens to Molly's children, and she goes to rescue them and does rescue them. But in the process of doing that, she murders a bushman who worked with her husband, and then she is arrested by the same constable, the English constable we were talking about earlier, and she confesses to these, killings that she's done, and she is hanged. Which I gotta say, I was actually surprised that it went there. I mean, I'm not surprised that it went there, because you can kind of see it coming, but at the same time, I was like, well, give Leah Purcell credit for fucking going there, for just, making a decision and fucking sticking with it.
She commits.
Yeah. It's kind of like how we were talking about over on the Patreon, John Carpenter committed to The Thing, and like, this is the thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of like how Slayer committed to being Slayer. Leah Purcell committed to like making this movie fucking dark, feminist,
grim,
and just relentless.
Western.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is the only way you can make, depending on what your subject matter is the only way you can make an Australian Western, because basically anything could kill you. The land, the people, the animals.
The bugs, the animals. Everything's trying to kill you.
Australia is just like, it's hard to exist. There's this guy that I follow on YouTube, and he's just like making a video, and he's walking down the street, and there's just like a python crossing the street, and he's like, well, we'll just wait for that python to cross the street. And it's in downtown Sydney. So, I mean, imagine what it was like in like 1870, So anyway, this movie is super fucking grim, and by the adults, it is very well acted. I would say the child actors, it's a mixed bag. And it didn't work for me entirely, but I can get to that later, because I would like to hear what you two thought of it. Don't everybody speak at once.
Okay, I will go.
Okay.
So I love a Western, and I love Australian films, and I love a dark, grim film. And I like parts of this. I think the backstory to this is really interesting, that Leah Purcell acted in the play version of this that's based on the short story from, I think, the 1870s. And she then wrote the novel of it, and then she directed and wrote and starred in the film adaptation, which I think, she's very clearly feels very passionately about this project. And I think that shows. I think her acting is quite good. I think she really channels the physical manifestations of trauma, anxiety, and what a domestic violence victim / survivor goes through. And I think she does it quite well, because it's very obvious very early on. When we're seeing flashes, like there's some fucked up shit going on. And it, like, even before we know what's happening, I was like, oh, this is what's happening. Like, so I think she does a good job with her facial expressions and with her body language. I think the actor Rob Collins, who plays Yadika, the indigenous man, I think he does a really good job too. I like their rapport. I like his rapport with her son. And I like, it's a very depressing, but very sweet scene where the son kind of shows his scar kind of accidentally from his father. And he's like, oh, no, my father didn't mean it. He was drunk. It's okay. And he's trying to cover for his dad. And Yadika's like, there's different ways to be a man. And he's like, because he's like, just because I don't have shoes, being a man is how you carry yourself. And it could have gone deeper. It could have gone more into that. But it was very clear what he's saying. Like, that's not really being a man. Like, that shouldn't be an excuse to be abusive. And so I liked that scene very much. I think the landscape looks beautiful. The cinematography, for the most part, is really nice.
Yep.
I found the score incredibly distracting and
overbearing,
often the wrong tone for what's happening on screen.
Yeah.
Like distractingly bad. Yeah, I think that's my biggest problem with this is the score. Like, it is distractingly bad, especially in pivotal key scenes.
And omnipresent.
Which is unnecessary.
It's overbearing. You're right. It doesn't match the tone. It's weird because it sounds anachronistic, not necessarily in all of the musical instruments, but often in the arrangements. Sounds anachronistic.
Yes.
Like, we were sitting there singing Stained to one of the songs because it actually like almost matched up.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And it's a weird choice because it's clearly like a choice. It's
It's definitely a stylistic choice.
And it's very bizarre. And I found that it kind of ruined everything for me.
Yeah, it's hard to fixate on what's good when that's so distracting. The other thing I wanted to say is that it very much, I couldn't not think of Jennifer Kent's amazing film, The Nightingale, which is... Seen that. Oh, it's amazing. But it is one of the most difficult films I've ever seen. It is brutally violent. It is extremely gory, but it's about a white woman and an indigenous man who go on the run together. And basically it's vengeance. She wants vengeance against the man who killed her husband and raped her. And like I said, it's a brutal film. It's great. But there are a lot of parallels because this also deals with rape and deals with racism against indigenous people and deals with misogyny. And I like seeing this film from the perspective of an indigenous woman, of course. That's great. What I found weird, though, and I kind of had this problem with The Nightingale, too, as much as I like that film. But I'm like, I'm watching this and I'm like, this is like, who is this for? Who is the audience intended? Because this woman, we already know that she's been abused by her abusive husband to the point where she's killed him. He's horrible. Do we really need to see her raped too? Like, do we really need to see her beaten down more? Like, why? Right. What is the point? So I had a problem with that too.
That scene is incredibly uncomfortable in the way that it's done with like the way it plays up the sound editing in the scene. And then when they go back later and like re-show you flashbacks of the rape scene, I'm like, why do we need to go back to this?
Right. We already know what happened.
We already dragged this out in a way that was just horribly uncomfortable. And like, why do we need to go back to this well?
That could be the point. I mean, it could be just like, this is what happens to women. Maybe that's the point.
I mean, it could be, but as a woman, I'm watching it and I'm like, I already know this.
Well, yeah.
Like, I live this. I know this.
It feels excessive.
Right. Yeah. And that's my point. Like, I get what you're saying, Dave. And I, and it is a tough line to toe. Like, do you show what happens? Do you pull back? Do you want to have people experience, like people who are not women, experience what it's like to be a woman? But also I'm like, but wait a minute, what about the people who are women who are getting triggered? Like, it's, so it's like,
yeah.
It's so it's like, I get the intent, but also I'm like, but who are you making this for? Like,
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I hear all that and I agree with all that. the question of who is this for, though, it's like, who is any movie? What is any movie? Who is it for? Really, if you think about it.
I mean, that's a fair question.
Because I mean, you think about like, what are some like super, like, who is The Thing for? We're talking about The Thing. The Thing is for people who like nihilism and goop, I guess. I know. And
true.
They like
but
gore. They
it's
like
not
isolation.
But it's not featuring triggering scenes, and
That's true.
different things can trigger different people. So it's very hard to do blanket, trigger warnings. Even though I think trigger warnings are important, but there's certain things that people who are victims and survivors talk about, and one of them is the excessive use of rape on screen, and it's not necessary. Like, you can insinuate it. You don't need to show it. And I think my biggest problem with the showing of it is not just the showing of it, but like you said, Evan, then we get a flashback where we need to see it again. And we're not seeing her face. We're not seeing her experience. We're seeing his face. And
we're seeing him commit the rape. We're seeing it from his perspective.
Exactly.
Which I think that's the part that really bothered me.
Yeah. And that's the difference in The Nightingale. And The Nightingale, as awful as it is to watch in a way because it's so brutal, you are constantly with the female protagonist. You are watching her. You are experiencing what she experiences rather than watching the perpetrator, the abuser, the rapist.
It's interesting that you both say all that, because I'm going to bring up The Last Duel, which I have not seen. And the reason I haven't seen it is because I don't want to watch a rape scene 3 times,
Yeah. That's why I haven't watched it, I have to say. Yeah.
And I know a lot of people, men and women, who are like, no, it's a legitimately good movie. And it's like, that may be true.
Right?
I did put off watching it for a very long time, and I don't think I mentioned to either of you that I saw it, but it actually is really well done. Like,
okay.
In showing the 3 different people's perspectives, I think it actually is well done. And I think there's a lot to say, like, the overall, like, overarching point of the movie around, like, violence and sexism, misogyny, rape culture. Like, there is a lot to say there, and I think there's a lot to dig into. But I had that same objection that I, like, put off seeing it for a very long time. And I'm not gonna say it's an easy watch, because it's not. But like, I think it was actually really well done.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Evan.
Okay. Well,
Now I
you
might actually
spoiler
watch
pieced
it.
me into it.
I know. I might watch it, maybe.
But I think I have to spoiler piece people away from Molly Johnson. But that's my bag. Anybody have extra things to say about Molly Johnson?
I mean, I thought the lead performance was really good.
She is good.
And I liked the character. I'm totally blanking on his name.
Yadika?
Yadika. Yeah, I thought Yadika was a great character. I thought that was a great performance. I also loved the scene where he was talking to her son and talking about what he called man's business, and explaining to the son that men's business is different. His dad's men's business and his men's business are different, and explaining the nuances of that. I really enjoyed that scene, and I was just so utterly heartbroken when she found him hanging from that tree later in the movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just there's a lot of brutality in this movie, and I know that's like a trademark of Westerns, and I know it's
trademark
also
of Australian Westerns.
Yeah.
Both are true.
And I know the movie it has a lot to say from a feminist perspective about violence and violence against women and violence against indigenous people. And I get all the points it's trying to make. I just found it particularly grim and particularly brutal and just very hard to watch in all the ways that it is just so graphic.
I will say, to the film's credit and to Leah Purcell's credit, I do like that the corporal, whatever his position is, his wife, who is an activist for women's rights and writes about women's issues. I like that she wants to hear Molly's story, to write it down, to talk about domestic violence and to talk about misogyny. Like, I think that that's great. Like, at least the film is showing, there is a legacy for her perspective. But so I agree. I think there's a lot of things that this film does well and some missteps.
Well, the last thing I'm going to say is, speaking of Australian Westerns, I wonder if either of you has seen The Proposition.
I have not.
2005, written by Nick Cave.
Interesting.
Directed by John Hillcoat. So you know it's not going to be an easy watch. But starring Guy Pearce and Danny Houston and I think Emily Watson. And it is an Australian Western that takes place in the bush if you think that Molly Johnson is violent, holy shit. So,
Yeah.
But it's not really so much about misogyny the way that Molly Johnson is, although that is an aspect of it. It's more about what the English did to Australians.
Yeah.
So it's just, I mentioned that as a corollary.
No, but that's important too, because that's also what The Nightingale covers too. And that's a really important topic that more films should, be covering and that we should be watching. But yeah, I also, as you were talking about it, I was like, one of the things I do like about this film tremendously is just the fact that it is a feminist Western, because far too often Westerns are only told from men's perspective, particularly white men's perspective. And so I think it's really important that we get more women's perspectives, and specifically women of color. I mean, I cannot think of another Western that is from a woman of color's perspective the way this film is. So I think that in and of itself is a triumph.
I can't think of a single movie. I can barely think of Westerns that have women as protagonists aside from like Bad Girls. I mean, or Johnny Guitar.
The Wind, The Nightingale.
Well, I haven't seen The Nightingale.
Westward the Women.
Because of the child death that I have been warned about.
Very true. Yeah. Westward the Women is an early Western with an almost all-female cast of something like 60 women. Anyway.
I've seen a lot of Westerns and I haven't seen those, so I gotta get back on it.
You do. But there's not a lot. The Kelly Reichardt one. Oh my God, with Michelle Williams.
The Creek.
No. Oh my God, why are we spacing on this name? What is wrong with us?
Not Creek. No. Mills Peak or what?
Well, Meek's Cut Off.
Meek's Cut Off.
What is wrong with us? Yeah. Oh my God. Thank you, Evan.
I've seen that one.
Yes, I know. I know there's another one that's really good. Yeah, Meek's Cut Off.
Yep.
There is one more thing that I wanted to say, because you brought up Megan. I did like that the sergeant's wife was starting her own radical feminist paper and wanted to write the stories. And I liked that we got to see her talking about her sister being abused and him being dismissive of it and claiming that, you're biased, you're bringing a biased perspective. But I have to say, I wish there wasn't so much of the story dedicated to him. I did not give a shit about what he was doing, and I felt like it was wasted screen time that we spent way too much time with him.
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding. I could not agree more with you, Evan. I know. Why didn't we feature the wife more, who is doing awesome shit? I want to see her more.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to your point, Megan, talking about how there are so few Westerns in particular from a woman's point of view, I was just thinking, Evan made me think about, I hadn't thought about that scene where he's being dismissive of his sister-in-law's trauma. Mm-hmm. And I think that we'd all be better served if that conversation happened in more movies. Where you see the guy being like a douchebag and the woman would be like, no, motherfucker, her husband beat her.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter that she did X, Y, or Z. You don't beat women. What the fuck? So that's my parting thought.
Dave, you're so right.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Because there's a lot of direct gaslighting in movies where it's usually the man is very directly gaslighting the main character, but there's not often this kind of casual gaslighting that you see in movies, which I think is more accurate to how a lot of people are in real life, and how
for sure
men particularly are quick to dismiss women, especially when it comes to these kinds of things. And so I agree with you that I think that it is important to show someone who is more casually gaslighty and dismissive, because that is the majority of the population. That's the majority of the situations, I feel like.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. So
yeah, it all sucks. But you're both so spot on. I have to say,
I don't want to be right.
Well, yeah, because it's a shitty thing to be right about, but no, you are. I have to say, the more we talk about this film, the more I like it.
Well,
Except for the score. The score is atrocious.
The things about it is it's like there are some things that are so good about it. You almost have to talk about it in an almost academic way.
Yes, agreed.
To separate the what for me is just the deadening of my emotions because of that god-awful score. I mean, now Evan's going to disagree with me because I know how he feels about this movie, but the only other movie I can think of off the top of my head that has a score that I think is so bad that it takes me out of moments of the movie is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I mean, that score is so ridiculously awful in places, but that to the point I'm like, why did anyone think this was a good idea? I mean, you just made Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which has an amazing score. And now you're making this? Jesus. Anyway, okay. I think we've talked through the legend of Bagger Vance and...
You mean Molly Johnson?
Oh, fuck me. Please, listeners, off mic, I had told Evan and Megan that I was afraid I was going to call it The Legend of Bagger Vance because that's what I kept thinking of when I thought of the title of this movie, and then I did it on mic. So there you go. What a jackass. Okay. Our second... Yeah. You know, it's special being me sometimes. So anyway.
You know what? This was such a tough conversation and tough movie and tough topics to discuss, even though it's very important. I think the levity is much needed and appreciated.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so I'm going to pat myself on the back for that unintentional gaffe. Okay, second and final movie of the night is Glorious. Directed by Rebecca McKendry. Story by Todd Rigney, screenplay by Joshua Hall and David Ian McKendry, starring the guy from True Blood and J.K. Simmons.
Ryan Quanten.
I can't pronounce his name. Quanten. I was unsure how to pronounce that, and I didn't ask before we started recording, so the guy from True Blood.
I love that. Jason from True Blood.
Yeah. So this is your rather long IMDb I think this is 3 sentences, but there are 3 long sentences. After a breakup, whatever.
I said, oh boy.
Oh yeah, here we go. Everybody get ready. After a breakup, Wes ends up at a remote rest stop. He finds himself locked inside the bathroom with a mysterious figure speaking from an adjacent stall. Soon, Wes realizes he is involved in a situation more terrible than he could imagine.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh, but that sounds so silly.
Yeah.
It does, but it also, I remember, caught my attention. I was like, wait a minute, J.K. Simmons is just a voice in a bathroom stall at a men's rest stop? I was like, count me in. I got to see this movie. I got to find out what this shit's all about.
Yeah.
With the most elaborate glory hole art I think I've ever seen.
Yeah. That's intense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found this movie. I mean, that's all true. The main character whose name I can't remember, even though J.K. Simmons says it
Wes?
a million times. Wes, fuck me, and I just read it too. It is.
Okay. Thought so.
Wes goes to this. He's driving. He seems depressed and or pissed off, and it's clear that he's gone through a breakup. Wink, wink.
He's falling asleep at the wheel when we first meet him. He's actually waking up from a dream while he's driving.
Right. So he pulls over at this rest stop and he can't get food out of a vending machine. And this really kind of mysterious woman helps him and then leaves. And then he gets drunk and like starts burning all the things in his car. And then he goes into this rest stop and passes out. And he wakes up and he has no pants on. And there's a voice in the stall next to him. And it's J.K. Simmons. What? What's funny?
No, it's just he wakes up with no pants. I saw this movie, but hearing it described,
he wakes
funny.
up outside where he was burning the stuff with no pants on, and then he goes inside the bathroom. Yeah. He also broke his phone too, like a fucking idiot. He drained the battery, leaving his ex all these messages, and then throws it and matches his phone.
Yeah. And so J.K. Simmons, it turns out, is a demigod who has chosen Wes. He needs 3/4 of Wes's liver in order to stop the demigod's father, J.K. Simmons' father, from destroying the world. And I won't get into all the like reasons behind that because it actually doesn't matter. But basically, this is a story about West trying to talk his way out of, this situation, and J.K. Simmons, the demigod, being like, no, man, this is what's going to happen. And if you don't do it, the world's actually going to end. So give me your liver. I mean, come on. And this really didn't work for me because I think Jason from True Blood was bad in the role.
Oh.
I don't care how good J.K. Simmons is. As my uncle would say, you can't make chicken out of chicken shit. So,
yikes.
And I just found this character detestable and unlikable. And I knew from the moment he first said, I thought she was the one, that he was a serial killer. I knew it.
Oh, yeah.
I knew it because I've read too many Stephen King stories. So, when he says, and he says that pretty early on, I think he says it to J.K. Simmons. He's like, oh, I thought she was the one. I was just like, well, he killed her. And he probably killed all the other ones too, because that's, there's a really early Stephen King story where it's about a guy who's like taking flowers to a date, and he shows up and the date is like the wrong woman or something like that.
Oh,
he's like gotten into its mind that's a different woman. It's like really early. It's like a Night Shift, and he would published it in a men's magazine in like the early 70s. And so he bludgeons her with a hammer, I think. And it's like, I just kept thinking of that short story the whole time, and to find out that actually is true. And that Jason from True Blood, in addition to being a not very good actor, you got to watch him go through the machinations of all this. I will say that J.K. Simmons, I think his performance is quite fine. But this just didn't work for me. And also when he finally gave up his liver, I knew J.K. Simmons keeps saying, look, if you do this thing, you're going to be able to walk out of here, man. It'll all be over. And I knew that was like, well, he'll be able to walk out of there, but you're going to keep J.K. Simmons, the demigod, makes a point of saying, look, I don't lie. I don't want to like tell you something and have it not be true. So you're going to be able to walk out of here. But I kept noticing he's not saying and live. He's just saying you're going to be able to walk out of here. Yeah. Which is exactly what happens. He cuts out his liver, he crawls out, and then he dies in the parking lot.
Well, I mean, if he didn't die from the blood loss, he'd certainly die from the infection, from how disgusting that shard is. Like that shard of glass that he uses to cut himself open. And J.K. Simmons says there's 120 something bacteria in that bathroom. There's way more bacteria in that bathroom than 127 bacteria.
Yeah. So I don't know. This was not. I was glad it was short. I mean, I wasn't bored, but at the same time, I was just like, nah. How about you, Megan?
So I actually liked Ryan Kwanten in this.
Oh.
I don't think he was a bad actor in this. I think he could have been better, but I don't think he was bad at all. I think I found his performance engaging. And I think there is an affable quality to Ryan Kwanten that I was like, okay, where is this going? J.K. Simmons was great, as always. J.K. Simmons is always great. He could read the phone book. Those insurance commercials he does, he's engaging and captivating and riveting in those. So not a surprise there. I really like Rebecca McHenry. I like her work. I like her Colors of the Dark podcast that she co-hosts. I've been following her for her writing and her work for a while. So I was really excited to see this. In addition to those two actors, I was really excited to see her direct a film, even though I know she has another film that she's directed. I really like the cinematography. I think it's a good use of space. I like the lighting. I think I'm really here for the kind of bisexual lighting, the purples and the pinks, and very phantasmagorical. I'm here for it. Yeah, and I think it's potentially interesting to have a Lovecraftian demigod be talking to you from a glory hole, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted more, and I think I wanted sharper writing. I wanted it to be more interesting. I wanted more interesting conversations. And yeah, like you, Dave, I was pretty certain pretty early on that he was a serial killer. And I thought the flashbacks, while they should have worked, didn't work.
Yeah.
I found them to be quite jarring. I thought the woman who played his girlfriend, Sherry, or whatever her name was, I didn't think she was a very good actor. So it really took me out of it. And yeah, it just, I don't know. I mean, yes, it's great that he gets his comeuppance. It's great that, you know, he's dead too. But I don't know. I kept yearning for more.
I agree with all of that, except for the good acting part, mostly on Ryan Quanten.
That is fair. I will say, maybe I was just biased because I liked him on True Blood.
You know what I did like? You were talking about like the lighting and stuff like that. And to me, I was so kind of not into the story that I didn't really care so much about. I do think it used its space well. I think that you're right about that. There were two things though. The one black character in the movie, and I don't know if this is a commentary on horror movies, but the one black character in the movie, not only is he just like the maintenance guy, but he also is the only person who gets killed on camera, and horrifically violently, I may add. But it's strange that after that, the fact that his blood was raining down from the ceiling in a mist, that I found very cool. I was like,
it was actually really beautiful.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think I've seen that before, you know? I mean, I've seen pink mist when like someone blows up because of a bomb, but I've never seen like a gentle rain shower of blood.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen anything. I've seen plenty of things where someone gets covered in buckets of blood. Like, give me your, Evil Dead 2s. But like this movie puts blood in a spatter, like you're saying, in a way that it covers the entire bathroom, but it doesn't drench everything. It's like a weird kind of middle ground between like sopping blood everywhere and just like a little bit of blood on everything.
Yeah. Evan, what about you? How do you come down on
I'm very much in agreement with both of you. I mean, the thing is, I thought the lead performance was fine. I didn't have any issue with it. I like J.K. Simmons, like both of you, although he was very funny in places, but I feel like the dialogue could have been sharper to what you were saying, Megan, especially because he's a god and he asks these like very like naive questions that you're like, you're a god, you're smart, you would not ask this dumb of a question about what someone means with like a metaphor or a joke. And I feel like it's the same thing with the lead character. Like, he's a serial killer and he's been able to go around and get away with it, but he's like shockingly dumb in this movie. You're like, how could you be both a criminal mastermind and be this stupid at the same time? Like, it's just not congruent. Like, it just doesn't add up to being a believable character to me.
You just described every problem with Joker, as far as like this guy who's just crazy and then becoming a criminal mastermind, as far as that movie's universe is concerned. But yes, I think I got to give you both credit for making the right decisions about Glorious.
I'm just bummed because people have been talking this movie up for months.
They really have.
And I was really excited to see it. I've been so excited to watch it. And I finally sat down and watched it. And I liked parts of it. I found it engaging. But like the last act, I would say, I was utterly bored. I was so ready for it to be over. I just could not take it anymore.
I think the place where the movie actually lost me, though, was when Wes picked up, I can't remember his name, the dead maintenance worker's leg and tried to beat down the door with it. I was just like, this is just kind of, I know it's supposed to be, and I don't know if it's because I'm getting older or what, but I was just like, this attempt at humor is so unearned. It's just mean-spirited, And like, I don't know. And the whole serial killer reveal was, I know that this movie is clearly a low budge movie, and they probably spent all of their money on booking J.K. Simmons for the 2 hours of voiceover work he did. And that being said, maybe Ryan Quanten's performance isn't what I think it should be, because they had an actor on set reading the lines who wasn't J.K. Simmons.
Maybe
that would be my guess. And then J.K. Simmons did his voiceover work afterward, and they edited around it. That would be my guess. But I just really the serial killer reveal. It's just like, well, how did she find? Did he give her all these photos as a gift? I mean, that was unclear. Or did she find them? I mean.
Sounds like it seemed like she found them because he like came home and was like do 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 do, and she just like had the box on the table with
but then
like
he's just got a knife
photos
with him.
And women's underwear.
You know, so like
he picked it up off the table. He was next to like the dining room
did he?
table. And
Okay.
He picked up the knife. Yeah.
See, that's that I had tuned out to the point where I didn't even realize that he just conveniently picked up a fucking chef's knife from the dining room table, because that's where you keep them when you haven't laid the table yet. By the way.
Mm-hmm.
This
correct.
roast that's in the oven that I'm going to cut in 90 minutes, I'm putting the knife out now. Yeah. I hadn't heard as many things about this, I think, as you, Evan, but I had heard some talk like, ooh, glorious. Hey. And now that I've seen it, it's more like glorious. That's more what it's like. As you would say, Evan, glorious question mark?
Exactly.
It's very Ron Burgundy.
I'm glorious.
Who put a question mark? I will say I'm now 2 for 2 for seeing horror movies at rest stop bathrooms.
What's the other one?
No Exit, which is a terrible movie.
The perfect title for a rest stop bathroom movie, though.
It's terrible, but it should be good because it's got some good people in it, like Dale Dickey. But it's not a good movie. But yeah, but I want to say, I think this is, again, we talked about this when we talked about the thing on Patreon, a singular location I always am here for, because I always want to see what creative ways a filmmaker, what they'll do with it. And, I don't know. There's something about a rest stop that I find really fascinating. I don't know, maybe because it's like, ooh, where are people going? Where are they off to? And kind of being trapped in a rest stop bathroom is awful, but also there's something really fascinating about it. So I like this conceptually, and I agree, Evan, you had said that it has some good ideas, it does some good things. Yeah, but I think for me the writing is the weakest part. It needs much stronger writing.
Absolutely. But the cinematography and the lighting, as you mentioned, are also really good. And
the
use of the space, like especially when he goes crawling through the vent, and we see the contorting positions of the camera where he's crawling around in the vents, and it seems like he's making forward progress and he's going to climb out in the roof, only to realize he just spits out back in the bathroom.
Yeah. And I also really like, the demigod tells him, don't look at me, you can't look at me. But I like that he's still, even though he's gotten the, warning not to, and like the verbal and physical warning, I like that he still keeps trying to like kind of look under the stall, and you see the demigod's body kind of like pulsating and like a weird like sack like underneath, and there's goo coming out of the stall. Like I like that too. I think
it's
it has
super
some
gross.
Yeah, it's got some really good visual ideas, like really good. Yeah, it's just the writing.
Some goopiness, to use an Evan phrase.
Yes.
That's true. It does have goopiness, just like the thing. We just keep coming back to the thing. A much better movie. One line that actually legitimately in this movie made me laugh out loud was when he was trying to figure out what he needed to provide the demigod, and he sticks his penis in the hole, and he's like, "You thought your human penis would save the world?" I died laughing when he said that.
That was clever, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that what you do with a glory hole? I mean,
that's what you're supposed to do.
And that's what he thought he needed to do.
Yeah.
Right?
I hadn't thought about that, though. The whole idea that this guy is like a serial killer who, according to the Polaroids, has killed at least 8, 10, 12 women, but he's a moron. So how does he get away with it?
Right.
Because here's the thing is, if you've she mentions in one of the flashbacks that it's like their 2-month and 14-day and whatever anniversary, and she gets him that teddy bear and it's very cute. And let's just assume maybe when she finds the photos, it's a month later. If you've been living together for 3.5 months and all of a sudden she's dead and you're gone, pretty sure the police, if they can't find you, they're at least going to know who you are, you know? So unless you've been like filing off your, fingernail or your fingertips and like ammonia everything like Jennifer Jason Leigh in Single White Female. So
good reference.
Thank you.
Such a great performance, by the way.
Oh yeah.
So good.
Yeah. And also, this is a very odd thing to bring up. The most realistic BJ I've ever seen on screen.
Yes. That's funny. That's funny you say that, but actually, I think you're
I
correct.
remember watching that and being like, that is, first of all, I can't believe that this is so explicit while not being explicit, but also I believe every moment of this.
Yeah, but I will say that's a really disturbing scene because that's a rape scene, and I feel like most people don't think of it as a rape scene, and so it's like, but I feel like it's even more disturbing because it is simulated so well. Yeah. Anyway, I feel like we're going on another strange tangent, but very true. I think you guys are right, and I like that you're thinking about like how did he get away with this? Why didn't he do this and all that? My thing that I couldn't get over is why is he so guilt-ridden about killing her when he's a serial killer of women?
Well, I think that he
like what?
I think that he. This is what I was thinking. I've been thinking about this as we've been talking about it. He says, "I thought
yes,
she was.
Tell me.
I thought she was different," and I think that
she was different.
That maybe
right.
she was different,
go.
and then she found the photos, and so that what
so
made, and so he had to kill her. And it's like,
okay.
Maybe the different one was supposed to be the one that was like, it's okay that you killed those other, 13 women and served them as barbecue to your friends. Whatever. I made up the barbecue part. Although he does meet her at a barbecue.
Fresh. He does meet her at a barbecue. Yeah. Again, still very like fresh.
But he kills that woman from the barbecue though, who was not a girlfriend, obviously, the blonde. That's like the first photo in the pack. It's very strange.
You're
right. Doesn't add up.
Yeah.
Well, I could keep picking apart all the problems of this movie all night, but I think that I've had enough. How about you two? Any final thoughts on Glorious ?
I'm tapping out ?
Okay. How about you, Megan?
I think I've said all I need to say.
Well, then let's recap this motherfucker. So we have The Legend of Molly Johnson, which is in theaters and on demand. I think that I'm going to have to come down as a mild pass, but as I have been saying for weeks now, your mileage may vary. What about you two?
I'm kind of conflicted because I think it's difficult to watch. Definitely trigger warning for abuse and rape and a very unnecessary rape scene. But I will say I'm going to kind of give it a soft recommendation. I like hard pass, soft recommendation because there are not enough feminist Westerns and this is by an Indigenous woman. So I'm going to recommend it for that with the caveat that there are trigger warnings and the score is no.
Oh, the score.
No. Yes, I'm sticking with it. So yeah, but I'm gonna mildly recommend it.
Evan.
I feel like, Dave, I come down closer on your side to a pass, but there is a lot there, and I agree with you, Megan, that if you've got the stomach for it, it's worth seeing. But my God, that score is just so unbearable.
Yeah.
So I guess pass, but it's a very, very reluctant pass. That's what I'll say.
There you go.
Yeah, I get that.
Soft pass, reluctant pass, it's all the same. And then we have Glorious, which is on Shudder as of, if you're listening to this on Friday when it comes out, yesterday, it's on Shudder. It's a pass for me. I wouldn't say a hard pass, but it is a pass.
Yeah, same for me. It's a pass. I wanted to like it more. I 3/4 of a decent movie to me, but I'm so bored by the last act.
Yeah, I know. I'm kind of torn because I think there are good ideas here, good visuals, but yeah, I think I don't know. I think either pass or just go in with low expectations. I don't know.
You should have low expectations for everything, because then you'll be surprised by things that are mediocre. So
that's true. And usually I do. Usually I try to go in like with low expectations. So that's the wrong thing to say. If you watch it, watch it. If you don't, you don't. I don't know.
That's fair too,
That's a very non-committal recommendation.
This is why I have adopted the phrase that I did not invent. Your mileage may vary for pretty much every recommendation I give now. So,
yeah, I was like, didn't I start saying that? And you like ran with it. I love it.
You definitely said that like before I did. That's for sure.
No, but I love that you've just like run with it so hard.
Well,
yeah,
it's a great phrase, because it encapsulates. I love this, and it's an objectively good movie, but it's not your kind of movie. So
right.
Anyway,
yeah. I think I'm gonna steal that back then for this and say your mileage may vary.
All right, fine. You can have it.
We'll both have it. We'll share.
Cool. I'm sticking where I am.
Yeah.
Evan's got his own pun network that he's like working out all the time. So
that's true. I know. I'm not sharp on the puns like that. So
all righty. So that wraps up this episode of Spoiler Piece Theater. I want to thank our wonderful editor, Otto Clammer, who does all the heavy lifting for us each week. Thank you, Otto.
Thanks, Otto.
Thanks, Otto.
You can find Spoiler Piece Theater anywhere you get podcasts. You can find us on our website, spoilerpiece.com. You can find us on the social medias, Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook. Did I just say social medias? What the hell is wrong with me?
You did.
You can find us on Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook, and we're at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. You could email us if you wanted to get in touch. That email address is spoilerpiece@gmail.com. Drop us a note. Tell us that actually it shouldn't have an 83% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It should have a 100. I don't know what's wrong with people who don't like Glorious, including you three. Or you can give us a call
at 862-21
and just leave that message that I told you to send in an email. If you like the show, please rate and review us by going to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece, or you can rate us and review us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. That is a big benefit to us with the high star ratings because it helps people to find the show.
We have seen some new reviews come through, so thank you to those of you who've left us reviews.
Yes, thank you very much. And
so nice.
If you really like the show, please consider joining our Patreon. As we mentioned throughout the episode, this week we talk about John Carpenter's The Thing and how much we all just got a kick out of it. One of us seeing it for the first time, and two of us seeing it for the millionth, roughly, time. And that's everything, everybody. So my name is Dave Riedel. I write and I talk about movies. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. And if you would like to follow me on the social medias, I'm at Dave Sees Movies on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd.
My name is Evan Crean. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. You can follow me on the social medias as Real Recon. And those social medias, by the way, are Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. And that's real as in film real.
And my name is Megan Kearns. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I too am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. And you can follow me on Twitter at OpinionSWorld or on Instagram and Letterboxd at TheOpinionS.
Thanks, everyone. We will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.